Hello, everyone. This is Shubham Tiwari, and I thank you for tuning into this live masterclass. This masterclass is brought to you by Phyllo. Phyllo is the universal API for creator data. Now, moving forward with today's session, our guest today is the founder of Lettergrowth. It's a tool to help newsletters grow their subscribers through cross promotions with other newsletters. We are going to see Lettergrowth today, as well as how to cross promote your newsletters. Please welcome Paul Metcalfe. Paul, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you very much. It's great to be here. Great to talk to your audience about newsletters and about Lettergrowth, the tool, and using that for cross promotions. So thank you.
So let's begin with Lettergrowth, Paul. So before you start showing us Lettergrowth, please tell us more about Lettergrowth and why did you start it?
So Lettergrowth, the idea behind it is that you can find other newsletters for cross promotions. So maybe to start at the basics, what is a cross promotion? So a newsletter can grow in a number of ways, organically by posting on social or through paid ads, and paying for ads on social networks, on Google, on websites, whatever. But so there's different ways of growing. Now, one of the ways, particularly when you are smaller and you don't have a budget for paid ads, maybe you don't have huge social followings, which I think is probably most of us, is to get together with like-minded newsletters, like-minded creators who have similar audiences, and to essentially work together to do maybe a short-term or long-term partnership where you can, at a very simple level, shout each other's newsletter out. So in your own newsletter, some comments saying, hey, I recommend this newsletter by these people. I think it's awesome. I'm subscribed. I think you should too. The recommendation from your to your audience for another newsletter. And that can be quite an effective way of growing. It doesn't cost anything. And it can help just get over, certainly when you are smaller, getting over those initial kind of hurdles of where am I going to get subscribers, and banging your head against the wall, trying to post on social, or worried about spending budget that you maybe don't really have on paid ads. Now, one of the problems with doing cross promotions is you may have some people that you know in your immediate circle that you can talk to about doing a cross promotion. But once you've sort of exhausted your immediate contacts, well, how do you find newsletters to do cross promotions, to make a partnership with? And really, it comes down to cold outreach, reaching out to newsletters saying, hey, we have a similar audience. Do you want to do a cross promotion? I love your newsletter. Do you want to do a cross promotion? Now, the problem with that is, first of all, you don't know if they're interested in doing a cross promotion, so you could be wasting your time in that sense and reaching out. And secondly, you don't know necessarily how big they are as well. Now, usually when you're doing cross promotion, you're doing it with an audience of a similar size. So if someone's a very different size, they may not want to do a cross promotion with you, or it may not be so beneficial for you to do that either. You're looking for audience for newsletters with similar sized audiences to yourself, and a newsletter, a writer, an operator who is willing to do a cross promotion. So it can be quite time consuming doing that outreach and getting rejected because it's not a good fit. So when I had a newsletter and I came to a point where I had a few hundred subscribers, and I was like, okay, I want to do some cross promotions here. It's going to be a good way to grow, but I really haven't got the time, and I'm too lazy to do tons of outreach and not get anywhere with it. So I came up with the came with the idea, but I'd seen some other people trying to do this thing of getting willing newsletters together in a directory, so database. They weren't done as well as I would have liked to have seen them done, and thought, well, why don't I just build something myself? I have a newsletter audience, people who write newsletters. I have that, a small audience of those people I can reach out to and get in touch with and see if they'd be interested in listing. So that's really where it came from. It was solving my own problems, seeing that there was nothing that I kind of liked on the market out there, So yeah, I started building something, and this was 13, 14, well, yeah, maybe 4 months ago. And
Wow.
then it launched maybe 3.5 months ago. It took a couple of weeks just to get a kind of initial sort of
amazing.
tool.
So do you keep a count of the number of collaborations done via Lettergrowth?
It's hard to do that. The tool itself, once people have found each other and connect, it's sort of outside of my control. The tool is still really what you call an MVP, a minimal viable product, in that it's not how I see things being done finally, but it works well enough to get going to see if there's interest. So people can find other newsletters, then they can get their email address and contact from there. So I see numbers of how often people are grabbing an email address to reach out to do a cross promotion. So I see that there's activity. I can see where that activity is. I also do get feedback. So I get feedback from people who, were kind enough to either give a testimonial or just to mention that, they've done 15 cross promotions in the last few weeks, and they've all come through Lettergrowth. So I do see those on Twitter and do track those down. So yeah, there is activity. Of course, not everybody is active, and some people will list a newsletter and expect things to happen. You still have to make some effort, but it makes things a little bit easier to do that.
So before we come to monetization and cross promotion, please give us, a demo or, how Lettergrowth works and how it looks.
Yeah. So let me, I can share a screen. I can do that. Okay. So once you're in the ad, now I'm already signed in. So you have to sign in to use it. But once you're signed in, this is the screen that you see. So headline numbers, how many newsletters we have listed, 556 at the moment. So they are technically live, looking for cross-promotion partners. The total subscribers across those newsletters is 5.4 million subscribers. So there are some big newsletters in there, some very big newsletters in there, and there are a long tail of much smaller ones. You can browse newsletters in the database. You can add your own newsletter. You don't have to add your newsletter to come and look and reach out to others. But if you add your newsletter, there's more chance of you finding a cross-promotion partner because people can reach out to you. So let's just look at, so on the left-hand side, we have a number of ways to cut the data. It's going a little slow. So we can look at just browse through all newsletters. They are sorted by subscribers. So you can see that, there's some pretty big 1.4 million subscribers with Flipboard there. But we gradually get down to smaller newsletters. It's very easy to search for things. There's a filter. I have to move this out of the way. So we can filter by different categories of newsletters, which I think is probably one of the more easy ways to find things. So if I'm interested in doing something for, I don't know, climate, let's say, a few climate ones listed recently. Okay, let's get rid of that. Okay. And then we can get down into, okay, well, here's some newsletters that are categorized as being in the climate market. So now I can look at those and okay, well, let's check this one. Let's see one that I know of, Decarbon Fuse. Okay, we can go into that. It sounds interesting. And then we've got some more information about, okay, well, what is the newsletter about? How many subscribers do they have? Kind of, how do they categorize themselves? And then what are they looking for? In this case, looking for a cross promotion with business newsletters aimed at energy, chemicals, agriculture, et cetera, and then importantly, with a minimum of 200 subscribers. So they're happy to work with quality newsletters that are much smaller than themselves in this case. In some cases, there will be much more even between these two numbers, but in this case, it could be a good opportunity for someone starting out with a climate-related newsletter. to work with a bigger newsletter, and hopefully get some extra subscribers. And then we can see what kind of categories, again, just to make things easier to search. We can save this if we wanted to kind of, so we can just save it to come back to later. We can send them an email, or we can just go check out their website and just have a look at what they do. Okay, so we can check it out. Maybe there's an archive there, so we can read through an archive. I mean, it's important we just don't choose any newsletter to do cross promotion. You're going to recommend it to your audience, so you need to like the newsletter. You need to understand that it's a quality newsletter, because you don't want to do something that lets your audience down. So it's important to subscribe to it, take a look at it, look at past issues, and see what it's all about. And then if you think, yeah, this is cool, then we can just send an email, copy an email and paste it into email and reach out and say, hey, I've got an email newsletter that does X, Y, Z. Would you be interested in doing a cross promotion? I fit the criteria you're looking for. So let's move from there. Okay. So we can look at things by different. So this is just basically a list of all newsletters. We can look at kind of recent, so most recent ones that are listed. So this is just ordered differently, but basically the same information in a different way. If we wanted to, we can start by category. So if we can just look through and browse through all the various different categories, I should probably put some numbers on here to show how many are in a category. Not surprisingly, in the kind of creators, business, entrepreneurship, we probably have a lot of newsletters in those areas. Harminder, I think I saw you on here. So here's your crushed content in here. As you can see, people can put a lot more information about what their newsletter is about, and what they're looking for. Let's go back to the list. Okay, we can also look about, okay, well, what are people looking for? So we have a by wanted category. So we can do it from, okay, well, what are other newsletters looking for? So I can just click through, go in that way. And then another one is an important one is by minimum subscribers. So if you know how many subscribers you have, if you have 5,000, 5,000 subscribers, then you are going to be looking in this kind of range of the 5,000 to 10,000. So let's see what newsletters are available to me to reach out to with the subscriber numbers that I have. And again, we can filter that further by different categories. And recently I've added to be able to cut it by newsletter tool. And when I say newsletter tool, I mean primarily the email provider they're using, so the Beehive, Substacks, ConvertKit, etc. Not everyone has kind of filled this in, but a lot of the Beehive and Substack ones are up to date. And the reason I did this is Beehive and Substack both have kind of recommendation widgets, tools, whatever you want to call it, where you can easily recommend someone after they subscribe on that particular tool.
Yeah.
So people are looking and saying, okay, I want to do some cross promotion, but I only want to swap with Beehive newsletters, because then we can just put it on our tool. I don't need to, I don't want to put something in my newsletter. I just want it as an easy recommendation for both sides after someone subscribes to my newsletter. So it's just another way to cut the data and make things a little bit easier for the Beehive and Substack guys particularly, and also Upscribe, which is is not tied to any particular platform, but has a similar kind of recommendation widget across multiple platforms. Not many people have updated this to show that, but I hope as new people come in, if they're using Upscribe, they will fill that in, because again, that's helpful if you want to swap a recommendation with someone who's using Upscribe. It's just a very easy way to do things. All right, so okay, so some newsletters I can save it to in here, so that's unique to me. So this one, Decarbon Fuse, is one that I just saved, and then I can kind of just tick things off as I've reached out. So if I've sent an email to them, I can just click this off, and they'll just drop to the bottom and say that I've reached out to these. I don't need to do that again. And I can see that if I go into the newsletter details at any time, I can just see that there's a tick and it's been contacted. So that is pretty much this. It's not a complicated thing. I mean, it's a directory of new newsletters who are looking for partnerships at the end of the day. There's some information there. Pretty easy to add your newsletter. Just to hit all those things and submit. They then approve everything that comes in, just to make sure it's a, it looks legit. It's proper newsletter. The subscriber number looks about right, and they have a working website, etc., etc. But it's very, it takes a few minutes to get listed. That is really kind of how the tool is working at the moment. As I say, it's an MVP, so there are functions that I'd like to include. There are things that people are asking for me to include. Some things are easy or easier for me to add on this platform, and others are at some point I have to think about, do I invest in a custom solution to build something to do this?
So Paul, about the community, how many creators do you have in the community of Lettergrowth at this point?
So so the community is it's a little over 500, I forget. So I say, I mean, it's probably, I'm not a community person. I seem to have kind of struck lucky with how well the community is working, because it's the first community I've created, managed, whatever. Obviously I've been a member of communities, but I think the communities kind of have I can't think of the word, but there's usually a very small percentage of people who are active. So maybe there's 10% people active, then there's maybe 10% people who are kind of in and out and looking. Maybe there's 1% who are really sort of engaging and contributing and having discussions. So although there's over 500 people, there's probably a smaller kind of core group of people who are really kind of contributing and talking to each other exactly on a day-to-day basis. And without my involvement so much as well, there's not a lot of because I know that some communities you have to kind of gamify things, or you need to be just prompting all the time. There's a lot of conversations that are just happening naturally, and it's working really well in that sense. And a very good mix of people. Great conversations, great people, but a good mix of people. There are people who are literally just starting out, and there are people in there with quite significant newsletter businesses and quite significant subscriber counts. Some with experience of starting and growing multiple newsletters, and also acquiring and also being acquired. So there's a good mix of experience and people who are willing to help other people out. So It has it's worked very well.
Got it. So what are some of the ways of monetizing a newsletter? Because getting cross promotion is one thing, of course, growing your audience, but how do you monetize it at the end of the day?
Well, for monetization, I mean, there's different ways you can do this. A pretty standard one that you'll see is through sponsorships. So if you read something like Morning Brew or The Hustle, or one of these kind of newsletters, you'll see that not The Hustle anymore, though, since they were taken over by HubSpot, but certainly Morning Brew, you will see sections which are ads, sponsored ads, and this works, at the huge newsletter level, like something like Morning Brew, right down to much smaller newsletters. So I send out a weekly newsletter update for Lettergrowth, for a selection of new newsletters that have listed, and some other bits and pieces about any changes I've made or anything happening in the newsletter world that's interesting. I have some sponsorships in there, so I only have 1,500 people on that list, so it's not huge, but it's quite targeted. So they're all people who run newsletters. So I have some sponsors in there, and I have a similar to what a Morning Brew sponsorship might look like. So that's probably the one that people are most familiar with. it's not always easy to get sponsorships.
Yeah.
Clearly you need to have, be of a certain size or have a very high value. You can be smaller, but with a very high value audience. And doing essentially outbound selling to get sponsorships is, can be hard work to do that. It's nice when you get inbound, and I've been lucky enough with this newsletter that people have come to me, have recognized, say, well, this is a good audience to sponsor, to promote to, and to pay for sponsorship. So if you get in a position where people are reaching out to you, that's great, but that doesn't happen all the time, and you need to go out and sell. You can monetize and have a little bit more control, particularly when you're smaller, with affiliate offers. But being very careful to choose things which are relevant to your audience. Don't just throw something in because it pays a good commission, but you can usually find something which is relevant for your audience, whether it be a tool that you use, a product you bought. So something like that can be a good way to monetize when you're small. It's maybe not perhaps a strategy to use for long term, because you're not really in control. If the affiliate that you're using suddenly decides they don't want to do it anymore, or they want to cut the percentage or whatever it is, then kind of leaves you stranded. So it is probably better to get sponsorships as well, and then fill out gaps in inventory with affiliate deals. There are things like, I remember where the Sparkloop partnership program, and Beehive also has something that they've launched as a similar thing, where newsletters who want to grow are paying on a per subscriber basis. So it's kind of like an affiliate deal, or a cost per action. So these newsletters are using a widget. So after someone subscribes to your newsletter, there's a recommendation of, here's other newsletters that you might like. And in some cases, those will be paid. So they might pay $2 per subscriber, or $3 per subscriber. And people can, if you have quite a few people coming and subscribing to your newsletter, or you have a reasonable size list, you can make a decent amount of money from that. And it's a nice way to get started earning something, and maybe starting to cover the costs of your tools. There are some big newsletters who do very well from the Sparkloop partnership program. And I say Beehive have launched something similar recently as well. So they're trying to do the same thing within the Beehive network, where a newsletter can say, hey, I want to grow and I'm willing to pay for it. So please, anyone who wants to go out and promote my newsletter, here's the link, and I'm willing to pay $2 per active engaged subscriber. So that's another way, and a good way to get started when you're small. Another way to monetize is with your own products. And I think that this was, so I mentioned the hustle before. So in the days when I first started out, I recall hearing Sam Parr, the founder, talking on a podcast about one of the things he wanted to do with the hustle was to build this media company, this huge audience, sell sponsorships, but the actual overall goal was to learn from the audience. Well, what do they want? And then what can we create to sell to that audience, so that we don't have to rely completely on sponsorships. We can create our own products based upon what our audience wants. And then they came up with the Trends product, which is a paid subscription, community plus newsletter, which was then under their control. And of course, they were able to grow that very quickly because they had an audience already. They knew what the audience wanted. So, as soon as they put out a landing page and hand us your credit card link, that sort of took off from there. So it is, if you already have products, or you want to create your own products, you can build that audience and then learn about what that audience wants, and then you have somewhere, a jumping off point to then sell a product. At least figure out if it's going to work, if it's not going to work, which is better than shouting into the void. Right. If you're doing that. So if you have a newsletter and an audience that lends itself to digital products, buying digital products, then it's a good way to go, and it takes the pressure off having to do all that outreach to find sponsors. In the same way as your own products, it could be it could be a service. If you're running a consulting type business, or you're providing freelance services for anything. Let's say you do SEO, then you could create a newsletter and start a newsletter about SEO tips and tricks, tactics and things, but then you can sell your services as well to that audience. So that's another thing you can do. Something I've been seeing a little bit of recently is people using their newsletter to advertise jobs. So again, it's kind of like a sponsorship, but it's a jobs thing. So particularly if you have
pretty big in B2B SaaS. I mean,
exactly. Yeah. So if you've got a B2B newsletter, whether it be SaaS or traditional industry, then if you've got an audience that's focused on one particular type of role, then it's a great place to advertise jobs. So recruitment agencies, or even directly with big companies that are recruiting, can be a good way to earn some extra cash that way. And then there are other ways. Again, it's maybe a little bit like a product, but if you're an author, a writer, you're writing a book, you can use your newsletter if you have an e-commerce site to send traffic to that e-commerce site, et cetera, et cetera. So there's lots of different kind of creative ways, but sponsorships, affiliate, own products are probably the biggest. And we're starting to see a little bit more around these kind of CPA type deals with sparkly partnership programs, that kind of thing.
Right.
Oh, and then there's a final. So
please go.
There's another way, which an important one, but I always overlook because I haven't done it before. And that's a premium newsletter, a paid for newsletter, which and particularly you see a lot of this on, I don't say a lot, but you see this on Substack where people will have a paid. So it might be a big journalist, writer, whatever, will have a free occasional newsletter, but then will charge a monthly subscription to access their main newsletter, their main product. A good example of this that perhaps your audience will know is the trends.vc, Drew Riley's newsletter. And that is now has a community with it as well, but effectively that started out as a paid newsletter. So there would be a light version of his weekly trends sort of information. But then there will be a pro version, which was, I don't recall how much it is, but back when I signed up, maybe it was $100 a year, where you got a much more detailed set of information on the newsletter.
Right. So yeah, a little fun fact: we had Sampar on our other show last year, so that's also great.
Very good.
Learning from very cool people here. So coming to content creation now, because that's the central piece of writing a newsletter. How to create solid content that keeps readers coming back, because the recall value plays a huge role, right? So how do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything, like your social account, your blogging, whatever. You need to have an understanding of what your audience wants, and to be able to somewhat cater to that need. But you also need to try to find a different angle. So if you're starting something new, you shouldn't be doing just the same as what everybody else is doing, and it's very hard not to. But you need to have a different take on things, a different angle, doing things a little bit differently. Whether that's just more in-depth writing, finding information, and curating information that nobody else is doing. It's hard, but you just got to find a different kind of angle on what to do. Now, this it's a difficult question to answer about what should you be doing for making the content creation to make it great. But it really depends on what your newsletter is, because newsletters can take different formats. It could be a curated newsletter of here's 10 things I found this week that I think you'll find useful. It could be a full sort of editorial piece, more journalistic piece. So it will depend on what you're doing. We see a lot of curated newsletters. So again, using kind of Morning Brew or the Hustlers examples, which are really curated newsletters, where they're putting together a lot of information from different places, but then putting some context and a little bit of analysis and commentary around that information. There are others like The Browser, which is a newsletter that shares, has a paid premium aspect to it, but it shares articles as well, curated articles. But they find things that you probably wouldn't find yourself. So there's some, there's a lot of value there, and they spend many hours and searching through many hundreds of articles each day to find interesting things to share with their audience. So they're putting a lot of effort in time and finding things that people wouldn't hear about. So that makes them stand out and makes them valuable because nobody else is doing that. If you go more into sort of kind of things like finance and investing and that kind of thing, then clearly being able to provide timely information and and detailed analytics and that kind of thing for your audience is going to set you apart. So it's making that effort to dive into everything and come up with a newsletter that's different and meets the needs of your audience.
Yeah.
So, and I think if you have to spend a lot, you have to be. I mean, a lot of newsletters I've done, I've had a curated element to them, and you just have to be consuming a lot of content to find what's good and trying not to share the same things as every other newsletter is doing. And one thing I find with some curated newsletter, people think that it's easy just to go out and grab a load of links, throw them as a newsletter and send it out. But you have to make the effort to explain to your audience, well, why are you sending this? What's the context here? Why is this important? Not just saying, here's a great thing, here's the link. It's really, having your opinion. People are there to hear what you have to say and to take your recommendation and understand why you're recommending this. And I think you start to add more value when you do that, and rather than just here's a bunch of links that are useful. And I think that's how you stand out, when you bring your opinion, that context, your personality to a newsletter.
Right.
And in other ways, you can just something that makes a format different. Now, I don't know if you had Josh Spector on the show before. You may be aware of him with his For the Interested newsletter. He sends out his as a curator. He sends out a link, but he made his newsletter extremely short. He turned it into a daily newsletter from a weekly, and then he turned it into essentially a 1 or 2 sentence newsletter.
Wow. Okay.
And then so there's a couple of sentences, and then there's an ad, which is also usually kind of 1 sentence. So it's extremely short. It shares just one thing every day. Now it works for him, and I like that format because it's easy to consume. I know he's going to share something great, right? 90% of the time, it's something that's of interest to me, and sometimes it isn't, but that's just the way it is. But it's of interest to me, but I know it's going to take seconds for me to find out whether it's interesting or not. So, and then I can click through to whatever it is that he's sharing, and then I can, you do whatever I need to do, watch that video, listen to that podcast or whatever. But it consumes barely any of my time to understand if this is worth my while or not. And the same with the ad as well. The ad is, it's clearly an ad, but it's also done that it's, it's text-based. And there's always it's often something interesting that someone's promoting. It's written in a way that makes it interesting. So he's taking a format, well, not a format, sorry, but a content that's been done before. There's nothing new about curated content, but he's made it into a format that that's just different to everybody else's, and very easy to consume. And he's very good at picking and finding good things to share with his audience. He understands his audience.
Yeah, it reminds me of, a Japanese saying which says, in reduction, there is expansion. So, I mean, such, great creativity newsletter creators have. Another thing that, that plagues a lot of newsletter creators, not just who are beginning their career, but also who are maturing in their career, is the open rate and the click-through rates. Sometimes, even when your headcount is increasing, the open rate is not increasing, right? So how do you make sure that both of these things are increasing side by side?
Yeah, well, I mean, they don't necessarily have to sort of increase side by side. Well, if you mean that as subscribers grow, open rate is also continuing to maintain or get better. Open rate's a difficult one because it's an imperfect measure, because it changes within iOS, which shows all emails as opened even if you didn't open them. So iPhone users don't necessarily give you correct data because the way iOS works. But on the flip side, I think Gmail may block some tracking of open rates. So on the flip side, that gives it the other way around. And plus, depending on what audience you're serving, people may use pixel blocking as well to give you sending to a very savvy online type audience, developers or something like that may well be more likely to use tools that block open tracking. So it's not a perfect measure, although it is a measure and people still pay attention to it. I think it's more a way of seeing a trend. For big changes in the trend that you have, then you need to look out for those things. But how do you get people to open your newsletter? Send great content, right? Send a great newsletter. Send great things that people want to open. It's as simple and as difficult as that. And you need to keep doing it. You need to keep delighting your audience with great things, so that when they see your name in their inbox, that they want to open it. I go back to the Josh Spector example. For me, I open it. I see it's from him. I know it's going to be good. I know it's not going to consume a lot of my time. I know, I know what I'm going to get. So, I probably open every single one of his newsletters. In that sense. So yeah, send great things. I think first and foremost is people need to want to recognize your name and see it as, I want to open that because it's going to be good. The subject line is going to help. So having a subject line that is not boring, not dull, that entices someone to want to open, but without being clickbait. So you don't want to do something that encourages the open, but then is a complete letdown afterwards. But the subject line is going to help. If people are deciding, I've got 20 emails in my inbox, I'm going to delete 18 of them. I need to quickly pick 2 to read. Then I'm probably looking at subject lines. So yeah, good content, who it's from, the subject line, right? So that's all going to help with getting your email opened. Click rates. Again, it's going to depend on your newsletter. If it's an editorial article type newsletter, then you may not be encouraging click rates because all the information is in the newsletter. So click rate is perhaps not as important, but it's still a signal to tools like Gmail that the newsletter is important. The newsletter is important in your inbox. So even if you have an article base, perhaps there's something where you are encouraging someone to click to go see something else or do something else in that. If you're sending a curated newsletter, then you'll have links. You'll have many more links, and if you're doing the right thing, then you want people to click on those links because that's what you're sharing with them. So are you showing the right things? Are you showing good things? Are you in your sort of this is why I'm in the writing you do to say this is why I'm sharing this with you. could that be better? Could you improve on that? Could you sell the click a little better with how you kind of tee it up with, this is something I found, this is something interesting. If you're sending a lot of links and no one's ever clicking, then there's probably something wrong with what you're sending. And then it's and then maybe perhaps you need to reach out to your audience, find out, is this what you want to see, or do you want to see something else? And you can use a survey or something like that to do that. Or just try different things, try some new things. And with most email tools, you get click tracking, so you can see at an individual link level, what is getting clicked. And it's worth looking at that, worth reviewing that, saying, okay, well, what did get clicked in this issue? What didn't? And should I send more of that type of content in my newsletter than the other types that didn't get clicked so much?
Right. Yeah.
So
now speaking of social media, how can a newsletter writer harness the power of social media to grow an audience? And I will give you an example. I'm sure you must have heard of this creator called James Clear.
Mm-hmm.
So James Clear sends quotations by himself, by others, and some wisdom nuggets. And he always gives this link to share it on Twitter or Facebook and all. And I've shared it like 10, 20 times. I don't even remember.
Yeah.
So is this the right way to go about it, or are there any other ways to go about it? And how are you using social media to grow your audience?
It's a good question, and I think it's going to differ for different people of how they want to use social media. So how do I do things? I primarily use Twitter, it's sort of my social media of choice, and I try to post things that are interesting, and that's going to attract the people that I would like to follow me and ultimately to click through onto whatever project I'm working on. At the moment, it's been kind of Lettergrowth. So I'm not always, but I will write specific newsletter focused content because I want people who are creating newsletters to click through and look at Lettergrowth and hopefully use it and sign up and use it as a tool. I don't always post just about newsletters, and I post other kind of some random things as well. And I think it's very important that we're all people and we all, we're not just machines. That said, if you look at someone like Justin Welsh, who clearly, grew massive audiences on LinkedIn and then Twitter. If you look at his content, is generally focused on one kind of core idea, and he repeats himself again and again and again and again in multiple different ways, but the same kind of core ideas, and that attracts an audience. He attracts an audience. So I'm not going to pretend to be particularly great at social media. I've a little over 3,000 followers, so it's certainly not very big at all. And I go in ups and peaks and troughs of enjoying kind of promoting myself on Twitter, and then kind of get to like, this is a bit of a drag, and and then I kind of leave it for a few days and then come back to it. So so I find it hard to do something like Justin Welsh does, where he just focuses on one core idea and keeps going and going and going. But that does work, and he attracts an audience, and then he moves that audience to his newsletter, to his email list and his newsletter. And I think that is the way to look at it. Is you want followers, but ultimately you want those followers from social to get to your newsletter. So you need to be, even if it's not all the time, you need to be posting content that is related to your newsletter, and dropping, making sure you promote your newsletter. I see this quite often. People, maybe they only have small followings, but they'll say, I'm really struggling. I've got 100 subscribers and I'm really struggling to get, everything seems to have plateaued. I've got these subscribers and now I can't get any more. So, well, okay, you look at their Twitter account, and they haven't mentioned their newsletter in 2 or 3 days. So if you're looking to grow, you need to be mentioning and dropping a link to your newsletter at least once a day, really, for people to be clicking to it. So, and I don't mean just a blatant sort of post of here's my newsletter. It's here's a tweet or a post on LinkedIn or wherever it is that's interesting, useful, and then at the end of it, okay, if you want more of this, here's a link to my newsletter. And just selling, for want of a better word, the reason they should go and sign up to your newsletter. The thing with social is consistency. Sometimes where I fail is to say, kind of those peaks and troughs, but it's being consistent and consistently growing your social media and consistently posting. If I track how kind of well my if I go and look at my ConvertKit account, I use ConvertKit for the Lettergrowth newsletter, and I see the kind of ups and downs of subscribers, and say, okay, well, that day was some good tweets. Those 3 days, I didn't really tweet. That day was a good tweet. And there's almost a perfect correlation, right? If I post, I get subscribers. If I don't get subscribers. There's a correlation there. The important thing, particularly if you're smaller, and it's still important for me with a few thousand subscribers, is you need to engage with other accounts. Often you'll get more views on a tweet that's a reply than just a tweet that you make yourself. I'm not sure if that's similar with LinkedIn. I'm guessing it is, particularly if you're small.
Mostly.
But yeah, so engaging with others and sort of being seen in the comment section, and having something to say, having something to add to the conversation, some value to bring to that. That's not just repeating what the idea was, but maybe it's some experience you had, or something like that. That will start to get you noticed. It might not get you the follower, but some people will look at your profile, and then they'll see a link and go from there. So, right. which leads to the other thing is having your profile set up of what you do. So if you're wanting to promote something, you're wanting to promote your newsletter, then your profile needs to your bio needs to be set up for that. Of this is what I do, this is who it's for, this is why you should sign up. Here's the link. It's something very clear that people aren't, because people will come and look at a profile but won't necessarily follow. But you might see the bio and see something interesting and see a link and go, okay, well, I'll take a look at that. Right, okay, this is interesting. I'll sign up for the newsletter. So yeah, using that, and I guess again, pretty much any social platform you're active on, you can have some form of bio, some form of profile, some form of link, to make sure that is pointing people to your newsletter.
Wonderful. Paul, thank you so much for this masterclass session that you gave us. We wish you all the best. You're revolutionizing this space of newsletters by, creating this tool called Lettergrowth. We wish you the best, and your, audience members. Anything that you want to share, which I didn't ask you, you can share now.
No, I'm pretty good. So it's quite comprehensive. It's the first time I've kind of done one of these things, so I hope it came across well. So I hope that's okay. And yeah, if anyone is running their newsletter, is running a newsletter, then lettergrowth.com is where to go. Or follow me on Twitter, Paul DM. Be great if you could send that round afterwards, but that would be awesome. And yeah, reach out if you need any help with your newsletter. I'm more than happy to help anyone.
We'll put all the links that point to Paul in the description of this video. And
all right.
Yeah, we'll see you in the next episodes. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
And cut. That's it for today's episode, guys. If you really liked it, please subscribe to the 1000 Faces Club and press the bell icon below so that you don't miss any videos from us. Thank you.